We have another small topic, the safe movement of people and vehicle in the workplace, 8.6. The safe movement of people and vehicles in the workplace. So it's entirely a game of the site layout, the company layout, you know, the shop floor management, in other words. How are you gonna make sure, how are you gonna make sure the people safe movement throughout your company premises as well as the vehicle in the workplace, especially the parking areas, the speed limits and the line of fires or the red areas, no vehicles or even the people can't approach actually. So it's a game of complete comprehensive layout, the safest layout, and should be understood and shared with all the employees and all the visitors, stakeholders, whosoever is visiting our company. Now look at some of the examples. Typical risks related to vehicle movement, loss of control, overturning and collision. What happened, So we required some sort of actions to be taken and make sure it is not going to happen due to driver error or environmental and mechanical reasons. And overturning, how we gonna avoid, we have to create and put some precautions on board. And collision, how we gonna train our drivers to make sure there is no chance of collision, with the vehicles or pedestrians or fixed objects. Like I gave you one example while we were discussing heavy equipments. I hope you remember. You have a lot of racks in the warehouse. Just the forklift came inside, hit to one corner, and all racks are fall down. And terrible kind of property damage. And on the other side, if somebody fall down, the material fall down on a person, even the fatality could happen. Several incidents happened. So what could cause a forklift truck to overturn? Might be the speed, uneven floor, several other reasons. So let's discuss as per NEBOSH. So we required proper controls because there are several factors that can cause a forklift truck to overturn, like cornering while being driven too fast. So speed is a killer. That is why we have proper speed kind of warning signs in several areas. Uneven loading of the forks, driving over potholes, and also driving with the load elevated. The more forks you will keep up, the gravity will be disturbed. So what we have to do is make sure with the load from the floor maximum 8 inches. You have to lift your forks and drive. More than that means you are increasing the probability of tipping over or toppling over even. Uneven tire pressures would be another reason. Driving across a slope rather than straight up down the fall line. Excessive braking, collision especially with curbs. These are some of the reasons. What are the risk factors? Driving too fast, inadequate lighting, reversing with the help of a banksman, blind spots actually, such as corners and entrances. And sometimes we don't have corner mirrors actually to see who is coming from left or right. Bad weather conditions, obstructed visibility, especially once you have the load which directly coming in front of your eyes, so it's hard to see up front. So in that sense, the back driving, should also be considered actually, rather than otherwise use a guide. Poor design of pedestrian walkways and crossing points, lack of vehicle maintenance and silent operation of machinery. So these are the factors, the risk factors which need to be considered and put some controls accordingly. Now, no non-movement related hazards. These are typical non-movement related hazards arise from loading, overloading, unloading, steering, coupling, maintenance work. Yesterday, I hope you remember we discussed one of the chemical scenario, like you are loading, unloading, then transportation and, stacking, destacking. So all are having some sort of hazards which we truly need to consider. So how are we gonna control them? Workplace transport control measures. Again, hierarchy of control. Whenever we use the word control, hierarchy of control have to be, we have to bring that in our mind actually. So the first thing is eliminate the hazard. If it's not possible, create a safe place. Quite generic things which we are doing day to day, mashallah. Create a safe person and risk assessment is one of the foundational document which we truly have to consider. Identify the hazards, identify the groups at risk, and evaluate the risk, record an improvement, and also review. So these are logical steps of risk assessment, which we have discussed in managing risk element number 3. And once you are going for a risk assessment, consider 3 important factors, the workplace environment, the driver, the vehicle. So workplace, vehicle, and driver. How the workplace environment should look like, what factors are involved. Make sure you are not ignoring like the vehicle free zone areas, pedestrian free zones, traffic routes layout, your segregation, marked walkways, separate access points, speed limit signal, vehicle movement. So all these factors are relevant to the workplace environment, including visibility, signage, the ventilation or kind of well-lit maintained road pathways, avoid gradients and even barriers at changes in levels, loading docks as well. So these all factors are relevant to the workplace environment. Now let's talk about some of the controls could reduce the risk in areas where vehicles are reversing, especially in the parking areas or like you mentioned, you have your trucks or containers inspection area. So how they are reversing there, what kind of mechanism you have implemented. So there must be some site rules for safe vehicle parking of forklift truck, especially like apply the handbrake, lower the forks and tip the mass forwards and remove the key. Don't obstruct a traffic route and do not obstruct a pedestrian route and do not obstruct emergency escape routes. I'm sure Sadara would have much better rules, even comparing to NEBOSH theories. That is my belief because you are part of Saudi Aramco. So I know very deeply to Saudi Aramco for the last 11 years, mashallah. So the workplace environment, we required some control measures to reduce risk of accident from the reversing vehicle, like avoid reversing by using one-way systems. You can segregate pedestrians and vehicles. Good visibility is critically important from vehicles, and reversing alarm and beacons should be used and applied. Mirrors to reduce blind spots. High visibility clothing and also good lighting, banksman, like the signalman and others, and training for drivers and pedestrians. This is all relevant to the environment. Safe vehicles, make sure suitable for intended use, suitable for the environment and conditions, maintained in safe working order, only driven by trained and qualified staff. Quite generic safety rules related to the vehicles. Inspected routinely before use. This is another important element to consider. And what about the driver? The safe vehicles. Make sure the seat for the driver and the passengers seat belt must be functioning actually. That means seat belt have to be buckled up properly. But if it's not functioning, of course, roll bar or roll cage, guard to protect the driver in the event of falling objects, horn, mirrors, audible reversing alarm, beacon or flashing light. And I'm sure you might have a separate inspection checklist for your heavy equipment. And all these points could be part of that checklist, especially for forklifts. Now, how the safe driver should be. Make sure it's competent, medically fit, and also you provided proper trainings, and you still have to supervise. Then you can consider is a safe driver. That was all about 8.6. Now we